Take her. I can't do this anymore." My son threw his daughter's wheelchair bag at my feet and drove away without looking back. I was 70 years old, and what I did next changed everything. 15 years later, that abandoned little girl walked into his office as the CEO who would decide his fate. "I'm grateful you're here with me. Stay until the end and comment which country you're watching from so I can see how far this story reaches." I never imagined my own son could be so heartless. At 70 years old, I thought I'd seen the worst of what people were capable of. I'd lived through a difficult marriage that ended in divorce, raised my son Damien alone while working double shifts at the hospital, watched friends betray each other over money, and buried loved ones who left too soon. But that rainy Tuesday evening in March, standing in the driveway of my small house in Maplewood Heights, I realized I was wrong. The worst was yet to come, and it would arrive in the form of my own flesh and blood. My name is Eleonora Castellano, and this is the story of how my son abandoned his disabled daughter on my doorstep, and how that little girl grew up to become the most powerful woman he would ever face. It started like any other evening. I was in my kitchen, the heart of my modest two-bedroom house on Birch Lane, preparing my evening tea. The kitchen was my sanctuary, filled with copper pots I'd collected over the years, herbs growing in small pots on the windowsill, and photographs of happier times stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. The March wind rattled the windows, and rain had been falling steadily since noon, turning the world outside gray and cold. I was just reaching for my favorite mug, the chipped blue one that Damien had made for me in a pottery class when he was 12, when I heard the screech of tires in my driveway. The sound was violent, angry, completely out of place in my quiet neighborhood where the loudest noise was usually Mrs. Patterson's wind chimes next door. Through the kitchen window, I saw a silver Mercedes come to an abrupt stop, its headlights putting through the evening gloom. My heart gave a small leap of surprise and, I'll admit, hope. I recognized that car. It belonged to my son, Damien. It had been 3 months since I'd last seen him. 3 long months of unanswered phone calls, ignored text messages, and the growing certainty that something was terribly wrong. Damien had always been busy with his technology consulting firm, Meridian Solutions, but he'd never gone this long without contact before. I'd started to worry that perhaps I'd done something to offend him, though I couldn't imagine what. Now here he was, and maybe we could finally talk. Finally bridge whatever gap had formed between us. But as I watched through the window, wiping my hands on my apron, I felt that small flame of hope begin to flicker and die. Something about the way Damien burst out of the driver's seat, the aggressive set of his shoulders, the way he slammed the car door with unnecessary force, told me this wasn't a friendly visit. Then he yanked open the back passenger door, and my breath caught in my throat. There, sitting in the back seat, was my granddaughter, Lily, 8 years old, with dark curls that fell past her shoulders, olive skin like her grandmother's, and eyes that had always reminded me of melted chocolate. She was in her wheelchair, strapped in carefully, her small face pale and streaked with tears that caught the light from the interior of the car. I abandoned my tea and rushed toward the front door as fast as my 70-year-old legs could carry me. My knees had been troubling me for years, arthritis making every step an exercise in managed pain, but I moved faster than I had in months. Something was very, very wrong. By the time I got the front door open and stepped out onto my small porch, Damien was already pulling Lily's wheelchair from the trunk. The rain was coming down harder now, and I could see Lily shivering in the back seat, still strapped in, waiting. "Damien!" I called out, my voice nearly lost in the sound of rain hitting the pavement. "Damien, talk to me! What's happening? Is everything all right?" He didn't answer me, didn't even look in my direction. He just unfolded the wheelchair with practiced but resentful movements, positioned it beside the car door, and began the process of transferring Lily from the seat to the chair. I hurried down my front steps, ignoring the rain that immediately began soaking through my cardigan and the thin house dress I wore underneath. "Damien Marcus Castellano," I said. using his full name the way I had when he was a boy and had done something that required serious attention. "You stop right now and tell me what this is about." He stopped at the base of my porch steps, and for the first time since arriving, he looked at me. The expression on his face made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger, though there was plenty of that. It wasn't frustration, though I could see that too. It was something worse. It was cold calculation, the look of a man who had made a decision and would not be swayed from it. "He need you to take her," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Take her? Take her where? What do you mean?" He grabbed a backpack from the back seat of his car, navy blue and worn at the edges, clearly packed in a hurry. He walked up my porch steps and threw it at my feet with enough force that it skidded across the wet wood and bumped against the front door. "Take her. Here. With you. Permanently." He wiped rain from his face with the back of his hand. "I can't do this anymore, Mom. I'm done." The words didn't make sense at first. They were too shocking, too impossible to process. "What do you mean you're done? Damien, she's your daughter." "I know exactly who she is." His voice rose, finally showing emotion, but it was the wrong emotion entirely. It was resentment, pure and bitter. "I know she's my daughter. I know she's disabled. I know she needs constant care, constant appointments, constant attention. I know all of it, Mom. And I'm telling you I can't do it anymore." I looked down at Lily, who had gone very still in her wheelchair. She was staring at her lap, at her small hands twisted together, tears streaming silently down her face. She was trying so hard to be quiet, to make herself invisible, and it broke my heart into pieces. "Damien, what about Isabel? Where's Lily's mother?" I knew my daughter-in-law had struggled with Lily's disability, but I never imagined she would just leave. His jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath the skin. "Isabel left 6 months ago. Couldn't handle the burden," she said. "Couldn't deal with having a kid who would never be normal." The cool words fell from his lips like stones. "So it's been just me and Lily for half a year, and I've reached my limit." 6 months? My voice cracked. "You didn't tell me? You didn't ask for help?" "I didn't want help. I wanted my life back." He ran his hand through his hair, which was now plastered to his head from the rain. "Do you understand what I'm trying to build, Mom? Meridian Solutions is on the verge of breaking into the Fortune 500. I'm about to close deals worth millions, plural. I'm meeting with investors, traveling to conferences, networking with people who can take my company to the next level. And your daughter is holding me back." The words exploded out of him. "Every single day is doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, special equipment, special schools, special everything. Do you know how much it costs? Do you know how much time it takes? I'm hemorrhaging money and time on a kid who's never going to walk, never going to be independent, never going to be able to take care of herself." Each word was like a dagger. I glanced at Lily again, and I could see her small body trembling, whether from cold or emotion, I couldn't tell. Probably both. "She's 8 years old, Damien. She's your child, and she has spina bifida, which isn't her fault. With proper care and support—" "I don't care anymore." He shouted it loud enough that I saw Mrs. Patterson's curtains twitch next door. "I don't care about proper care. I don't care about support groups and physical therapy and adaptive equipment. I care about my business. I care about my future, and she's not part of either." The rain was coming down harder now, soaking all of us, but neither Damien nor I moved. We stood there, locked in this terrible moment, while Lily sat between us, silent and shaking. "You can't just abandon your child," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Damien, I didn't raise you to be this kind of person." "Maybe you should have raised me to be more ambitious. Maybe you should have taught me that sometimes you have to make hard choices to get ahead in life." "Hard choices? You think throwing away your daughter is a hard choice? It's a cruel choice. It's an evil choice. Call it whatever you want. The choice is made. She's yours now. You raised me, you raise her."
I'm 70 years old. The reality of what he was proposing hit me fully. I'm living on a fixed income. I have arthritis. I don't have the resources to care for a child with special needs. He stopped at his car door and turned back to look at me, and I saw something in his face that made my stomach turn. It was satisfaction, like he'd been waiting for me to bring up exactly this point. Then I guess you'll have to figure it out. Just like I've had to figure out everything else in my life without help from anyone. Without help? I worked 2 jobs to put you through college. I gave up everything. And now I'm asking you to give up a little more. Consider it payback for all those times you told me family comes first. Well, she's family. She comes first. You handle it. I felt panic rising in my chest. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Damien, please, come inside. Let's talk about this. There has to be another solution. There isn't. He got into his driver's seat. I hurried down the steps, my knees screaming in protest, and reached his car just as he started the engine. I grabbed the window frame, rain pouring over me. What about money? Child support? Her medical expenses? Physical therapy costs thousands of dollars.
He looked at me with cold eyes, and I barely recognized my son in that face. Sue me if you want, Mom. I have lawyers on retainer. Good ones, expensive ones. They'll tie you up in court for years, and you'll spend whatever retirement savings you have just trying to get a hearing. And let's be honest, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to something quiet and vicious. You're 70 years old. How much time do you think you have left? You won't live long enough to see a single penny. The cruelty of it stole my breath. This was my son, the baby I'd held, the boy I'd loved unconditionally, threatening me with my own mortality. Don't call me, he continued. Don't come to my office. Don't try to contact me at all. As far as I'm concerned, this chapter of my life is closed. I'm moving forward, and neither of you are part of that future. Damien. He put the car in reverse, forcing me to step back or be hit. Goodbye, Mom. I stood there in my driveway, rain pouring down, watching my son's taillights disappear into the gray evening. He didn't slow down at the stop sign at the end of my street. He didn't look back. He just drove away, leaving his daughter behind like she was a piece of furniture he no longer wanted. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I stood there in the rain, my cardigan now completely soaked through, my hair plastered to my head, trying to process what had just happened. My son had abandoned his disabled daughter. My son, who I'd raised to be kind and compassionate, had looked at his own child and decided she wasn't worth his time or effort. Then I heard it, a sound so small and broken it almost got lost in the rain. I'm sorry, Grandma. I spun around to see Lily still sitting in her wheelchair on my porch, where Damien had left her. She was soaking wet, shivering violently, her thin jacket doing nothing to protect her from the cold, but it was her face that destroyed me. She looked so small, so defeated, so utterly convinced that this was somehow her fault. I'm sorry I'm too much trouble, she whispered, her voice catching on a sob she was trying desperately to hold back. I'm sorry Daddy doesn't want me anymore. I'm sorry I can't walk like other kids. I'm sorry. Whatever paralysis had held me broke instantly. I rushed to her, ignoring the pain in my knees, and kneeled down beside her wheelchair. The porch was covered, but the rain was blowing sideways, and we were both getting drenched. Lily, sweetheart, look at me. I took her cold, trembling hands in mine. They were so small, so fragile. Look at Grandma. She slowly raised her eyes to meet mine, and I saw in them such pain, such rejection, such fear that it made me want to scream. Listen to me very carefully. I squeezed her hands gently. You know me. None of this is your fault. Do you hear me? Not one single bit of it. You are not too much trouble. You are not a burden. You did nothing wrong. But Daddy said, your daddy is wrong. The words came out harsh, but I needed her to hear them, needed her to believe them. What he did tonight, leaving you here like this, that's on him. That's his failure, not yours. That's his cruelty, not your fault. But I can't walk, she sobbed, the words pouring out now, and I need help with everything, and my wheelchair costs so much money, and Miss Vivian told Daddy that I was the reason he couldn't be successful. She said if he just got rid of me, he could be rich and important and happy. My hands tightened on hers. Miss Vivian? Who is that? Daddy's girlfriend, Lily sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. She's really pretty, and she wears expensive dresses, and she smells like roses. But she doesn't like me. She never wanted me around when she came to visit. Of course. There was another woman. That explains so much about Damien's behavior over the past months. The distance, the coldness, the abandonment. He'd found someone new, someone who didn't want the complication of a disabled child, and he had chosen her over his own daughter. She told Daddy that important businessmen don't have time for kids with problems. She said I was holding him back from his full potential. And I guess she was right because, look, Daddy left me here and now he can go be successful without me. I pulled Lily into my arms, wheelchair and all, holding her as tightly as I dared. Her small body shook with sobs, all the emotion she had been holding back finally breaking free. Listen to me, Lily Marie Castellano, I said into her wet hair. That woman is cruel, and your father is a coward. You are not holding anyone back. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a beautiful, intelligent, wonderful little girl who deserves to be loved exactly as you are. But I'm broken, she whispered against my shoulder. No. I pulled back to look at her face. You are not broken. You have spina bifida, which is just a medical condition. It's a part of who you are, but it's not all of who you are. And with the right supporting care, you can do anything you set your mind to. She looked at me with such desperate hope, wanting to believe but afraid to trust. Really? Really? I wiped the tears from her cheeks. Now, let's get you inside before we both catch pneumonia. I wheeled Lily into my house, my muscles protesting, but my resolve iron hard. Once we were inside, with the door closed against the cold and rain, I took a moment to really look at her. She was soaked through, her jacket and pants dripping water onto my entryway floor. Her hair hung in wet tangles around her face. She was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering, but worse than all of that was the look in her eyes. The look of a child who had learned to expect rejection and disappointment. First things first, I said, forcing my voice to sound cheerful and normal. Let's get you out of these wet clothes and into something warm.
I wheeled her to my bathroom and helped her change. It had been years since I'd helped care for a child, and I'd never cared for one with Lily's specific needs. But I did my best. Her movements were limited below the waist, and she needed help with most things. But she tried so hard to help as much as she could, apologizing constantly for being trouble. Each apology broke my heart a little more. Once she was in dry clothes, one of my old t-shirts that hung like a dress on her small frame, and a pair of sweatpants we had to roll up several times, I wrapped her in the softest blanket I owned and made her hot chocolate. The kind with extra marshmallows, the way my mother used to make for me when I was upset. Lily sat in her wheelchair at my kitchen table, wrapped in the blue blanket, both hands around the warm mug. She sipped slowly, and I could see some color returning to her cheeks. While she drank, I examined the backpack Damien had thrown at my feet. What I found inside made my anger burn even hotter. There were 3 outfits, all dirty and wrinkled, clearly grabbed from a laundry basket without thought. 2 pairs of underwear, one with a hole in the elastic, a toothbrush with frayed bristles, and at the bottom, 4 prescription bottles. I picked up the bottles with trembling hands. They were all Lily's medications she needed for pain management, muscle spasms, and urinary tract infection prevention. But every single bottle was nearly empty, and none had been refilled. The dates on the labels showed they should have been refilled weeks ago. Lily, honey, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. When did you last take your medicine? She thought for a moment, her brow furrowing. I don't know. Daddy said we would get more when we needed it, but we never went to the pharmacy. My hands clenched around the bottles. Damien had not only abandoned his daughter, but he'd been neglecting her medical care for who knows how long. I dug deeper in the backpack. There was a folder with some papers inside. I pulled them out and spread them on the kitchen table. Medical records, but they were old. The most recent was from 8 months ago. Insurance cards that had expired, a list of doctors and specialists with phone numbers, but no appointment schedules or recent visit notes. It was like Damien had grabbed whatever paperwork was lying around and shoved it in a bag, without any thought to what might actually be useful or necessary. Lily, I said gently, when was the last time you went to the doctor? She thought for a moment, her brow furrowing. I don't know. Daddy said we would get more when we needed it, but we never went to the pharmacy. Well, she drank. I examined the backpack Damien had thrown at my feet. What I found inside made my anger burn even hotter. There were 3 outfits, old, dirty, and wrinkled, clearly grabbed from a laundry basket without thought, 2 pairs of underwear, one with a hole in the elastic, a toothbrush with frayed bristles, and at the bottom, 4 prescription bottles. When was the last time you got to therapy? I used to go twice a week, but then Daddy said it was too hard to take me. He said we'd start again when he had more time. That was after Mommy left. 6 months? Lily hadn't had physical therapy for 6 months? Physical therapy that was crucial for maintaining her muscle strength and mobility, for preventing complications, for giving her the best possible quality of life. What about school? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. I was going to Riverside Elementary, she said quietly, but then Daddy said it was too much trouble to get me there every day. Miss Vivian said homeschooling was better anyway, that I didn't need to be around other kids who would just make fun of me. And did someone homeschool you? Did you have a tutor or lessons? Lily shook her head slowly. Daddy said he would teach me when he had time, but he was always working. So mostly I just stayed in my room and watched TV or read the books I already had. So Damien had not only stopped her medical care and therapy, but he'd also completely abandoned her education. He'd isolated this little girl, keeping her trapped at home with no medical support, no therapy, no school, no friends, no life at all. And then he'd decided she was too much trouble and thrown her away? The rage I felt in that moment was unlike anything I'd experienced before. It was pure and burning and righteous. My son had become a monster, and he'd done it for what? For money? For a woman who'd convinced him his daughter was disposable? For the sake of his precious business success? But I pushed that rage down, deep down, where Lily couldn't see it. She didn't need to see my anger. She needed to see stability, safety, and love. Lily, I said, sitting down beside her at the table, I want you to understand something very important. What happened tonight, what your father did, was wrong. It was cruel and unjust, and you didn't deserve any of it. She looked at me with those big, sad eyes. But here's what's going to happen now, I continued, taking her small hand in mine. You're going to stay here with me, and we're going to make sure you get everything you need. Medical care, therapy, school, friends, all of it. Your life isn't over, sweetheart. It's just beginning. But you're old, Grandma, she said, and there was such worry in her voice. Not worry for herself, but worry for me. What if taking care of me is too hard? What if I'm too much trouble for you, too? Lily Marie, look at me. I waited until she met my eyes. I am 70 years old, which, yes, makes me old. And I have arthritis, and I live on a fixed income. And taking care of you is going to be challenging in ways I probably can't even imagine yet. But here's what I want you to know. I would rather struggle every single day for the rest of my life than let you feel unwanted for even one more minute." Tears filled her eyes again. "Really? Really?" I squeezed her hand. "You are my granddaughter, and I love you, not because of what you can or can't do, but because of who you are. And together, we're going to figure this out." She launched herself at me then, wrapping her thin arms around my neck and crying into my shoulder. But these tears were different from the earlier ones. These weren't tears of rejection and fear. These were tears of relief, of finally being wanted, of finally being safe. I held her for a long time, my own tears falling silently into her dark curls. That night, after I'd gotten Lily settled in my guest room with every soft pillow and warm blanket I owned, after I'd read her 3 stories and sung her the lullaby I used to sing to Damien when he was small, after she'd finally fallen asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, I sat alone in my kitchen and let myself feel everything. The grief of discovering what my son had become, the rage at his cruelty, the fear of how I would manage to care for a special needs child at my age with my limited resources, the overwhelming love I felt for Lily, and the fierce determination to protect her from any more harm. I pulled out a notebook and began making lists. Doctors we needed to contact, therapy we needed to schedule, schools we needed to research, insurance issues we needed to sort out. The list grew longer and longer, and with each item I added, the task ahead seemed more impossible. But I'd raised Damien alone after his father left. I'd worked 2 jobs while going to nursing school at night. I'd survived cancer 5 years ago. I'd buried my own mother and my best friend and my dreams of a comfortable retirement. I'd survived a lot, and I would survive this too. Because that little girl sleeping in my guest room deserved a life. She deserved joy and opportunity and the chance to discover who she could become. And I was going to make sure she got it, no matter what it cost me. What I didn't know that night, as I sat in my quiet kitchen, making plans and wiping away tears, was that the little girl I'd just promised to protect would grow up to be extraordinary. That she would surpass every limit anyone tried to put on her. That she would become successful beyond anything Damien had achieved with his precious Meridian solutions. And that 15 years later, she would walk into his office not as the abandoned, disabled daughter he'd thrown away, but as the CEO with the power to decide his fate. But that night, all I knew was that I had made a promise to Lily, and Eleanor Castellano had never broken a promise in her life. I wasn't going to start now. The morning after Damien abandoned Lily, I woke before dawn with a heaviness in my chest that felt like someone had stacked bricks on my ribcage while I slept. For a moment, lying in my bed in the pre-dawn darkness, I thought maybe it had all been a terrible nightmare. Maybe I would get up and find my house empty, my life unchanged, my son still the person I thought I'd raised him to be. Then I heard it, a small, frightened cry from the guest room down the hall. "Grandma? Grandma, are you there?" Reality crashed back over me like a cold wave. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real. Damien had abandoned his daughter, and that little girl was now my responsibility. I pulled myself out of bed, my knees protesting immediately. The arthritis was always worse in the morning, especially when it had been raining the night before. Each step toward the guest room felt like walking on broken glass, but I pushed through the pain. I found Lily sitting up in bed, her dark curls wild around her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. The stuffed rabbit was clutched against her chest like a shield. "I'm here, sweetheart," I said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "What's wrong?" "I thought maybe it was a dream. I thought maybe I'd wake up and be back at home and Daddy would say he was sorry and everything would be okay again. Fresh tears spilled over. But it's real, isn't it? He really left me. I gathered her into my arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. Yes, it's real. But you know what else is real? The promise I made to you last night. You're safe here, Lily. You're wanted here. And we're going to figure this out together. She cried for a long time, and I let her. She needed to grieve, needed to feel the pain of rejection before she could begin to heal from it. I held her and rocked her gently, the same way I'd done with Damien when he was small and had nightmares. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd comforted my son through his fears and hurts, raised him to be a good man, and now here I was, comforting the granddaughter he'd thrown away like garbage. When Lily's tears finally subsided, I helped her with her morning routine. It was my first real experience with the practical realities of caring for a child with spina bifida, and I quickly realized how much I had to learn. She needed help transferring from the bed to her wheelchair. She needed assistance in the bathroom. She needed someone to help her dress because her limited mobility below the waist made it difficult to pull on pants or socks. Each task took time and patience, and I could see Lily watching my face carefully, looking for signs of frustration or resentment. "I'm sorry I'm so slow," she said as I helped her pull on a pair of sweatpants from the meager clothes Damien had left. "Daddy always got mad when I took too long." "We're not in a hurry," I told her firmly. "And you never need to apologize for needing help. That's what I'm here for." After we got her dressed, I made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice. Simple, but Lily ate like she was starving, which made me wonder when she'd last had a proper meal. "This is really good, Grandma," she said between bites. "Better than the frozen dinners Daddy usually made." Another piece of evidence of Damien's neglect. I made a mental note to ask her more about her daily life before the abandonment, but not now. Now she needed normalcy and comfort, not an interrogation. After breakfast, I pulled out the notebook I'd been writing in the night before and looked at my list. It was daunting, overwhelming. But I'd learned long ago that the only way to eat an elephant was one bite at a time. "Lily," I said, sitting down at the kitchen table with her, "we have some important things we need to do today. First, we need to call your doctors and schedule appointments. Can you help me with that? Do you remember the names of your doctors?" She nodded slowly. "Dr. Morrison is my spine doctor. Dr. Chen does my bladder stuff, and I used to see Ms. Rodriguez for physical therapy, but we stopped going." I wrote down the names. "Good. That's very helpful. Now I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. When you're taking your medicine, do you have any pain? Any problems?" Lily bit her lip, that telltale sign that she was holding something back. "Sometimes my back hurts, and sometimes it burns when I go to the bathroom. But Daddy said I was probably just complaining for attention." My jaw clenched. Burning during urination was a classic sign of a urinary tract infection, something children with spina bifida were particularly susceptible to. Left untreated, UTIs could lead to serious kidney problems. "You're not complaining for attention," I said firmly. "If you're in pain, that's real and important, and we're going to get it checked out today." The first call I made was to Dr. Morrison's office. The receptionist who answered was pleasant but firm when I explained the situation. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Castellano, but we can't schedule an appointment without the child's legal guardian's authorization. If you're not listed as Lily's guardian, we'll need her father to call and give permission." "Her father is the one who abandoned her on my doorstep last night. He left with no intention of maintaining contact. I'm her grandmother and she needs medical attention." There was a pause. "I understand this is a difficult situation, but our hands are tied by medical privacy laws. Without legal guardianship or the father's authorization, we can't see her." It was the first roadblock of many I would encounter that day. I called Dr. Chen's office next and got the same response. Then the physical therapy clinic. Same answer.
Even when I explained that Lily was showing signs of a urinary tract infection and hadn't had her medications refilled in weeks, they couldn't help me without proper legal authorization. "You need to establish legal guardianship," one receptionist told me sympathetically. "Go to family court and file for emergency guardianship. Once you have that paperwork, we can help you." Family court, legal guardianship. The words felt heavy and foreign. I'd never dealt with the legal system beyond basic things like getting a driver's license or filing taxes. But I had no choice. I called the clerk's office at Maplewood Heights Family Court and was transferred 3 times before finally reaching someone who could help me. "You'll need to file a petition for emergency guardianship. You'll need to come in person to fill out the paperwork. There's a filing fee of $300, and you'll need to provide documentation of why emergency guardianship is necessary." $300. I mentally calculated my checking account balance and winced. It would be tight, but I could manage it. "How long does the process take?" I asked. "For emergency guardianship, you can usually get a hearing within a week if you can prove immediate danger or neglect, but you'll need evidence. Do you have documentation of the abandonment?" Did I have documentation? I had a wet backpack full of dirty clothes and expired medications. I had a granddaughter who hadn't seen a doctor in 5 months or been to school in 6. But would that be enough? "I'll gather what I can," I said. "When can I come in to file?" "We're open until 4 o'clock today." After I hung up, I looked at Lily, who had been listening to my half of the conversations with growing anxiety. "Grandma, are they going to make me go back to Daddy?" she asked, her voice small and scared. "No," I said firmly, though honestly, I wasn't entirely sure. "We're going to make sure you stay right here where you're safe, but we have to do it the right way, through the courts." The next call I made was harder. I called Damien's cell phone, my hands shaking as I dialed. It rang 4 times and then went to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. On the 3rd try, I left a message. "Damien, it's your mother. I need you to call me back immediately. Lily needs medical attention, and the doctors won't see her without your authorization or legal guardianship papers. If you have any decency left, you'll either give me permission to get her the care she needs, or you'll sign over guardianship. Call me back." He never did. I tried calling his office at Meridian Solutions next. A professional-sounding receptionist answered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Castellano is in meetings all day and can't be disturbed. Would you like to leave a message?" This is his mother, and it's a family emergency regarding his daughter. "I'll pass along the message, but I can't guarantee when he'll be able to return your call. He's preparing for a major investor presentation this week." Of course he was. His daughter might be sick and abandoned, but heaven forbid he miss an investor meeting.
By noon, I still hadn't heard back from Damien, and Lily was starting to show more concerning symptoms. She was running a low-grade fever, and she'd complained twice about pain during urination. I couldn't wait for legal guardianship or Damien's authorization. I had to get her medical help now. I called a friend from my nursing days, Barbara Chen, who ran a small clinic in the next town over. I explained the situation, leaving nothing out. "Eleanor, you know I'd love to help, but without being her legal guardian." "Barbara, please. She's 8 years old and showing signs of a UTI. If it spreads to her kidneys..." I let the implications hang in the air. There was a long pause. "Bring her in at 6 o'clock, after we close. I'll examine her off the books and prescribe what she needs. But Eleanor, you need to get this guardianship sorted out quickly. I can't keep treating her under the table." "Thank you," I breathed. "Thank you so much." That afternoon, I took Lily with me to the family court. It was in the municipal building downtown, a gray concrete structure that felt cold and intimidating. Getting Lily and her wheelchair in and out of my old Honda was a challenge I hadn't anticipated. The wheelchair was heavy and awkward, and my arthritic hands struggled with the mechanisms. "I can try to help," Lily offered, but there wasn't much she could do. It took us 10 minutes just to get from the parking lot to the building entrance, and by the time we got inside, I was sweating and my knees were screaming in protest. The clerk's office was on the 2nd floor. There was an elevator, but it was old and slow, and Lily grouped the armrests of her wheelchair nervously as we rode up. "I don't like elevators," she whispered. "They make my stomach feel funny." "Mine too," I admitted, and she gave me a small smile. The clerk who helped us was a middle-aged woman named Patricia, who looked at Lily with obvious sympathy when I explained our situation. "You're doing the right thing," she said quietly, as she handed me forms to fill out. "But I have to warn you, these cases can be complicated, especially when the parent is contesting guardianship." "He's not contesting it. He abandoned her." "Does he know you're filing for guardianship?" "I've tried to contact him multiple times. He won't return my calls." Patricia nodded slowly. "That might actually work in your favor. Document every attempt to contact him. Save text messages, voicemails, everything. The judge will want to see that you made every effort to involve the biological parent." I spent the next 2 hours filling out forms while Lily sat beside me, working on a coloring book Patricia had kindly provided. The questions were invasive and painful. Explain the nature of the neglect, describe the child's current living situation, detail your financial ability to provide care, list any physical or mental health concerns that might affect your ability to serve as guardian. When I got to the financial section, I had to face some hard truths. My monthly income from Social Security and a small pension from the hospital where I worked was $2,847. My rent was $950. Utilities averaged $200. Car insurance, food, medical expenses for myself. By the time I added it all up, I had maybe $400 left each month for anything else. How was I supposed to afford physical therapy, specialist appointments, adaptive equipment, and everything else Lily needed on $400 a month? But I kept filling out the forms because what choice did I have? When I finally submitted everything along with a check for $300 that left my checking account dangerously low, Patricia gave me a receipt and a court date. "Your hearing is scheduled for Wednesday at 9 a.m. Judge Martinez will review your petition. Make sure you bring any additional documentation you can gather between now and then. Medical records, school records, anything that demonstrates the child's need for care and the father's abandonment." Wednesday. That was 8 days away. 8 days of limbo, of not being able to make legal decisions for Lily, of hoping she didn't need emergency medical care that I couldn't authorize. After we left the courthouse, I took Lily to Barbara's clinic as promised. Barbara examined her thoroughly and confirmed what I'd suspected. "She has a urinary tract infection," Barbara said, writing out a prescription. "Not severe yet, but it needs to be treated. I'm also concerned about muscle atrophy in her legs. When was her last physical therapy session?" 6 months ago, I said quietly. Barbara's expression hardened. 6 months? Eleanor, that's medical neglect. Children with spina bifida need consistent therapy to maintain what function they have and prevent complications. "I know. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm fighting for guardianship." Barbara handed me the prescription along with samples of pain medication and vitamins. "This should help with the immediate infection, but she needs to get back into regular physical therapy as soon as possible. Every week that passes, she's losing strength and flexibility." "How much does physical therapy cost?" I asked, dreading the answer. "With insurance, about $40 per session. Without insurance, anywhere from $150 to $300 per session, and she needs at least twice a week, ideally 3 times a week." I did the math quickly. Even with insurance, that was at least $320 per month, and that was just physical therapy. It didn't include specialist appointments, medications, adaptive equipment, or any of the other expenses that came with caring for a child with special needs. I must have looked as overwhelmed as I felt because Barbara put her hand on my shoulder.
Eleanor, have you looked into resources for families caring for children with disabilities? There are programs that can help with costs. I don't even know where to start, I admitted. She pulled out a pad of paper and started writing. Here, this is the number for the Department of Human Services. They have programs for medical assistance, respite care, and adaptive equipment. This one is for a local nonprofit that helps families navigate the special needs system. And this is for a support group for grandparents raising grandchildren with disabilities. I took the paper with trembling hands. Thank you, Barbara, for everything. That's what friends are for. She looked at Lily, who was sitting quietly in her wheelchair, examining a poster about hand washing on the wall. "She's lucky to have you." I wasn't so sure about that. A 70-year-old woman with arthritis and a limited income hardly seemed like the ideal caregiver for a child with complex medical needs. But I was what Lily had, so I would have to be enough. That evening, after giving Lily her first dose of antibiotics and getting her settled in bed with a new book I'd picked up at the library, I started making calls from the list Barbara had given me. The Department of Human Services was closed for the day, but I left a detailed voicemail. The nonprofit had an answering service that promised someone would call me back within 24 hours. The support group met on Thursday evenings at a community center across town. Then I did something I'd been avoiding all day. I called my sister, Margaret, who lived 2 states away in Colorado. "Eleanor," she answered on the third ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "This is a surprise. How are you?" "I need to tell you something," I said, and then I explained everything. Damien's abandonment, Lily's neglect, my decision to fight for guardianship, all of it. Margaret was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then she said, "Eleanor, are you sure about this? You're 70 years old, raising a special needs child at your age." "I don't have a choice, Margaret. What was I supposed to do? Turn her away?" "You could have called Child Protective Services. Let the state handle it." The suggestion made my blood run cold. And have her end up in foster care? Bouncing from home to home, never knowing if she's wanted? She's been through enough. "I'm just worried about you," Margaret said gently. "You have arthritis. You're on a fixed income. What if you can't manage? What if it's too much?" "Then it's too much," I said firmly. "But I'm gonna try. She deserves someone who's gonna try." Margaret sighed. "I can send you some money. Not a lot, but maybe $500 to help with immediate expenses?" "Margaret, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to, but you're my sister, and that little girl is my great niece, even if I've only met her twice. Let me help." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you." After I hung up with Margaret, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at all the paperwork spread out before me. Court documents, medical records, prescription receipts, lists of phone numbers and resources, notes about what needed to be done and how much it would cost. It was overwhelming, terrifying, impossible. But then I thought about Lily, sleeping peacefully down the hall for maybe the first time in months. I thought about her small voice saying, "I'm sorry, I'm too much trouble." I thought about the fear in her eyes when she'd asked if she was going to have to go back to Damien. No, this might be hard, but it wasn't impossible. I'd faced hard things before and survived. I would survive this too. The next morning, I woke to find Lily already awake, sitting in her wheelchair by the window in the guest room, looking out at my small backyard. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said from the doorway. "Did you sleep okay?" "I had a dream," she said softly, not turning away from the window. "I dreamed that Mommy came back, and she and Daddy both said they were sorry, and we were a family again." My heart ached for her. That must have been a nice dream. "But it was just a dream," she continued, her voice matter-of-fact but sad. "When I woke up, I remembered that Mommy's gone, and Daddy doesn't want me, and this is real life now." I moved to sit in the chair beside the window. "Lily, I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know you wish things were different, but this is a chance for a new beginning. A different kind of family, but still a family." "Do you really want me here, Grandma? Or are you just keeping me because you have to?" "I want you here," I said firmly. "Not because I have to, because you're my granddaughter. And I love you." "Will it be easy?" "No.
Will there be hard days? Absolutely. But will you ever wonder if you're wanted? Never. I promise you that. She studied my face for a long moment, those dark eyes searching for any hint of doubt or deception. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay, Grandma. Okay, Grandma. The rest of that week was a blur of phone calls, appointments, and paperwork. I contacted the Department of Human Services and started the application process for medical assistance. I reached out to the nonprofit Barbara had recommended and spoke with a case manager named Stephen, who helped me understand the maze of services available for families in our situation. The first thing you need to know, Stephen told me during our phone call, is that you're entitled to help. There's no shame in accessing these resources. They exist specifically for situations like yours. He walked me through programs I'd never heard of: supplemental Social Security for children with disabilities, Medicaid waivers that could cover therapy and equipment, respite care programs that could give me breaks when I needed them, educational advocacy services that could help get Lily back into school with appropriate accommodations.
Each program had its own application process, its own requirements, its own waiting period. It was bureaucratic and complicated and frustrating, but Stephen was patient, walking me through each step. This is going to take time, he warned me. Some of these programs have waiting lists. Some require multiple rounds of documentation. But don't give up. Keep pushing, keep applying, keep advocating. I also called Riverside Elementary, the school Lily had attended before Damien pulled her out. I spoke with the principal, Mrs. Jameson, and explained the situation. We were wondering what happened to Lily, Mrs. Jameson said. One day she just stopped showing up, and when we called her father, he said he was homeschooling her. We should have followed up more persistently. Can she re-enroll? I asked. Of course, but I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Castellano. Our school has limited resources for students with physical disabilities. We have an elevator and accessible bathrooms, but we don't have a full-time aide or extensive adaptive equipment. Lily might be better served at Oakmont Academy. What's that? It's a school specifically for children with special needs. They have physical therapists on staff, adaptive technology, specially trained teachers. It's about 20 minutes from here. How much does it cost? It's a public school, so there's no tuition, but you'd need to go through the special education evaluation process to get her enrolled. That typically takes 60 days. 60 days. Another waiting period. But at least it was an option. On Thursday evening, I took Lily with me to the support group meeting Barbara had recommended. It was held at the Maplewood Community Center in a small room with folding chairs arranged in a circle. There were 7 other people there, all grandparents raising grandchildren under various difficult circumstances. An older couple caring for their teenage grandson after their daughter died of an overdose. A grandmother raising 3 siblings after her son was incarcerated. Another grandmother with custody of her autistic grandson. The facilitator, a social worker named Grace, welcomed us warmly. This is a safe space, she explained. What's shared here stays here. We're all fighting similar battles, and sometimes just knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. As we went around the circle sharing our stories, I felt some of the crushing isolation begin to lift. These people understood. They knew what it was like to be thrust back into parenting when you thought those days were behind you. They knew the financial strain, the physical exhaustion, the complicated grief of losing the child you'd raised while trying to save the child they'd abandoned. When it was my turn to share, I told them about Damien's abandonment, about Lily's medical needs, about the guardianship hearing coming up. The hardest part, I said, my voice catching, is knowing I raised him better than this. I taught him to be kind and compassionate. I modeled what it meant to put family first. And somehow, he still became someone who could throw away his own child. I keep wondering where I went wrong. An older man across the circle, whose name I'd learned was Frank, spoke up. You didn't go wrong. My son was the same way. I raised him right, or at least I thought I did. But somewhere along the way, he made his own choices. Bad choices.
That's on him, not on us. But how do you stop feeling responsible? I asked. You don't, Aruth Namer said gently. You just learn to carry it differently, and you focus on what you can control now, which is giving these kids the love and stability they deserve. After the meeting, several people gave me their phone numbers and encouraged me to call if I needed anything. Ruth, who was also caring for a granddaughter with physical disabilities, offered to share information about equipment suppliers and therapy programs she'd found helpful. This isn't a journey you have to make alone, Grace told me as Lily and I were leaving. You have a whole community now. Driving home that night, Lily was quiet, looking out the window at the streetlights passing by. Did you like the meeting? I asked her. Everyone was nice. But Grandma? Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to give up on me like Daddy did? I pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. Lily Marie Castellano, look at me. She turned those big, scared eyes toward me. I am never, ever going to give up on you. Not when things get hard, not when I'm tired, not when the money runs out. Never. Do you understand? You're stuck with me. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Stuck with you? Completely stuck, like glue, like gum on a shoe. You couldn't get rid of me if you tried. She laughed then, a real laugh, the first I'd heard from her since the abandonment. It was a beautiful sound. By the time Wednesday arrived, the day of the guardianship hearing, I'd gathered as much documentation as I could. I had statements from Barbara about Lily's medical neglect. I had records of every attempt I had made to contact Damien, all of which had gone unanswered. I had letters from the support group members and Stephen, the case manager, all attesting to my commitment to Lily's care. What I didn't have was any guarantee that the judge would rule in my favor. What happens if the judge says no? Lily asked that morning, as I helped her get dressed in the nicest outfit we could put together from her limited wardrobe. Then we appeal, I said formally. We keep fighting until we win. But what if we don't win? I knelt down beside her wheelchair and took both her hands in mine. Lily Marie Castellano, look at me. She turned those big, scared eyes toward me. I am never, ever going to give up on you. Not when things get hard, not when I'm tired, not when the money runs out. Never. Do you understand? You're stuck with me.
She searched my face for a moment, then nodded. I believe you, Grandma. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, less like the dramatic scenes from television and more like a formal office. Judge Martinez was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Damien wasn't there. I'd half expected him to show up to contest the guardianship, but his chair sat empty. He couldn't even be bothered to show up for this. Judge Martinez reviewed my petition and the documentation I'd provided. She asked me questions about my health, my finances, my plans for Lily's care and education. She asked Lily a few gentle questions about what she wanted and how she felt about living with me. I want to stay with Grandma. She asked me feel safe. Then Judge Martinez asked the question I'd been dreading. Mrs. Castellano, you're 70 years old. What happens to Lily if something happens to you? Have you thought about long-term planning? I'm working on updating my will to name a guardian for Lily if I become unable to care for her, I said. My sister Margaret has agreed to serve in that capacity. But Your Honor, I'm healthy aside from arthritis. My doctor says I have good years left, and every single one of those years will be devoted to making sure Lily has the life she deserves. Judge Martinez nodded slowly, making notes. Then she looked up and said, Mr. Castellano has been served notice of this hearing and has chosen to not appear or respond. He has not attempted to contact the court or contest this petition. In light of the evidence of abandonment and medical neglect, and considering the best interests of the child, I am granting emergency temporary guardianship to Eleanor Castellano. Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I felt dizzy. This is temporary guardianship for 6 months. We'll review the situation at that time. Mrs. Castellano, you'll need to file regular reports with the court about Lily's welfare and your guardianship.
Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Thank you." As we left the courtroom, Lily grabbed my hand. "We won?" "We won," I confirmed, squeezing her hand gently. "Does this mean I really get to stay with you?" "For at least 6 months, and hopefully much longer. But yes, sweetheart, you get to stay." She was quiet for a moment as I wheeled her toward the parking lot. Then she said, "Grandma, thank you for fighting for me. No one's ever done that before." My eyes filled with tears. "I'll always fight for you, Lily. Always." What I didn't tell her was how terrified I was. I'd won the battle for guardianship, but the war was just beginning. I had 6 months to prove I could provide for her, care for her, give her the life she deserved. 6 months to justify the judge's faith in me. 6 months to transform from a retired nurse living quietly on a fixed income into the guardian of a special needs child. But as I looked at Lily's face, seeing hope there for the first time since the abandonment, I knew I'd made the right choice. No matter what it cost me, no matter how hard it got, I would make this work. I had to. Because that little girl deserved someone who would fight for her, and Eleanor Castellano had never backed down from a fight in her life. The years that followed the guardianship hearing were the hardest of my life, but also the most rewarding. Raising Lily wasn't easy. There were countless doctor appointments, physical therapy sessions 3 times a week, battles with insurance companies, and more nights than I can count where I lay awake worrying about money. But Lily thrived. With consistent medical care and therapy, she regained strength and mobility she'd lost during those months of neglect. We got her into Oakmont Academy, where she flourished academically. She made friends, joined the debate team, and discovered a passion for technology and business that surprised us both. "I want to build something, Grandma," she told me when she was 13, her eyes bright with determination. "I want to create a company that helps people like me, people with disabilities who get told they can't do things." And she did. By the time Lily graduated high school at 17, she'd already started developing assistive technology software in our small living room. By 19, she'd secured her first round of venture capital funding. By 21, her company, Horizon Adaptive Technologies, was revolutionizing how people with disabilities accessed education and employment. I watched with pride and wonder as my granddaughter became everything Damien had said she could never be: independent, successful, powerful. Damien, meanwhile, had continued building Meridian Solutions. I followed his career from a distance, partly out of curiosity and partly because Lily needed to know where he was, even if he wanted nothing to do with her. His company had grown steadily, securing contracts with major corporations and government agencies. But he'd never become the Fortune 500 CEO he'd dreamed of being when he abandoned his daughter. Meridian Solutions was successful, but it had plateaued. Industry publications called it solid, but unspectacular. As for Vivian, Damien's mistress, who had encouraged him to abandon Lily, she'd married him 2 years after the abandonment. They'd had a son together, a boy named Preston. I saw photos of them occasionally in the business section of the newspaper or on social media. The perfect wealthy family with their perfect able-bodied child. It made me sick every time.
Lily never spoke about wanting revenge or justice. She was too focused on building her future to dwell on the past. But I saw the hurt in her eyes whenever someone asked about her parents. I saw the way she'd flinched when we passed by Meridian Solutions' downtown office building. The wounds Damien had inflicted hadn't healed. They'd just been carefully bandaged and hidden away. Now, 15 years after that rainy March evening when Damien drove away, I was 85 years old. My arthritis had gotten worse, forcing me to use a cane most days. My hair had gone completely white. I moved slower, tired more easily, and needed afternoon naps that I stubbornly resisted. But I was still here, still fighting, still watching over Lily, even though she was now 23 and didn't need watching anymore. We'd moved out of my small house on Birch Lane years ago. Lily's success had afforded us a beautiful, accessible home in the Riverside Hills neighborhood, with wide doorways, ramps instead of stairs, and a ground-floor master suite where I could live comfortably despite my aging body. "Grandma, you don't have to keep working," Lily would tell me. "You've done enough. Rest. Enjoy retirement." But I couldn't. Not yet. I still volunteered at the community center where that support group had met all those years ago, helping other grandparents navigate the system of caring for special needs children. It gave me purpose. Besides, I wanted to see how this story ended. On a crisp October morning, Lily came into the kitchen where I was having my coffee and reading the newspaper. The same ritual I'd maintained for decades. She was dressed in an expensive navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun, her wheelchair a sleek, custom-designed model that cost more than my old Honda had. But it was the look on her face that caught my attention. Determined, resolute, almost predatory. "Grandma, I need to tell you something." I set down my coffee cup. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Meridian Solutions is failing. Damien, my father," she said the word with careful neutrality, "made some bad investments last year. The company is hemorrhaging money and on the verge of bankruptcy." I felt my heartbeat quicken. "How do you know this?" "I've been monitoring his company for years," she admitted. "I needed to know where he was, what he was doing. And lately, I've been watching very carefully because I knew this was coming." "What was coming?" She wheeled closer to me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. It wasn't quite anger, but it was close. It was cold, calculated determination. Meridian Solutions is going to be put up for acquisition. Multiple companies are interested, but none of them know what I know about their business model, their contracts, their vulnerabilities. She paused. "Grandma, I'm going to buy his company." The words hung in the air between us. "You're going to buy Meridian Solutions?" I repeated slowly. "Yes. Horizon has the capital and the strategic interest. We've been looking to expand into the consulting space, and acquiring Meridian would give us immediate market presence." She spoke calmly, but I could hear the undercurrent of emotion. "But that's not why I'm really doing it." "Then why?" "Because 15 years ago he looked at me and decided I wasn't worth his time or effort. He decided his business was more important than his daughter. He bet everything on Meridian Solutions becoming his legacy. And now I'm going to own that legacy. I'm going to walk into his office, and he's going to have to face the daughter he threw away, the daughter who became more successful than he ever dreamed of being." I sat back in my chair, processing this. Part of me, the part that had spent 15 years watching Lily heal from the trauma of abandonment, worried about what this would do to her. Would confronting Damien reopen old wounds? Would it bring her closure or just more pain? But another part of me, the part that had been forced to scrimp and save for every therapy session and piece of equipment, the part that had watched Lily cry herself to sleep wondering why her daddy didn't love her, that part wanted to see Damien's face when he realized what he had lost. "When?" I asked simply. "The deal closes next week. The board meeting where the acquisition will be announced is next Friday at 2 o'clock. She reached out and took my hand. "I want you to be there, Grandma. You're the reason I survived. You're the reason I'm here at all. I want you to see this." "Lily, are you sure? This is a huge decision, and if it's motivated by revenge, it's not just revenge. It's good business. Meridian Solutions has valuable contracts and intellectual property that would benefit Horizon.
But yes, there's a personal element too. I need him to see me. I need him to understand what he threw away. I need him to know that I made it without him. I squeezed her hand. Then I'll be there. The week leading up to the board meeting felt surreal. Lily was constantly on conference calls with lawyers and financial advisors, finalizing the acquisition details. The business press started reporting on the deal, speculating about why a rising tech star like Horizon Adaptive Technologies would be interested in a struggling consulting firm like Meridian Solutions. None of them knew the real story. I spent the week thinking about Damien. I hadn't seen him in person since that night 15 years ago. I'd seen photos, of course. He'd aged well, still handsome, his hair just starting to gray at the temples. Success suited him, or at least it had until his company started failing.
I wondered if he ever thought about Lily, if he ever regretted his choice, if he'd followed her meteoric rise in the business world and realized who she was. Somehow I doubted it. Damien had always been good at compartmentalizing, at putting inconvenient truths in boxes and forgetting about them. Friday arrived too quickly and too slowly all at once. Lily had arranged for a car service to take us to Meridian Solutions' downtown offices. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, rising 20 stories above the financial district. "This is where he built his empire," Lily said quietly as we pulled up. "Important than me." The building was fully accessible, I noted. Ramps, automatic doors, wide elevators. Probably required by law, but the irony wasn't lost on me. Damien's building was more welcoming to his daughter than he'd ever been. We took the elevator to the 20th floor, where the executive offices and main conference room were located. Lily's assistant, Marcus, the name still made me wince, met us there. "Everything's ready, Ms. Castellano," he said. "The board is assembled. Mr. Castellano arrived 10 minutes ago." Lily nodded, her face composed and professional, but I could see her hands trembling slightly on the armrests of her wheelchair. "Lily," I said softly, "you don't have to do this. We can still walk away." She looked at me, and I saw in her eyes the same determination I'd seen 15 years ago when she was a scared 8-year-old promising herself she'd survive. "Yes, I do, Grandma. I need to close this circle." The conference room was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A long mahogany table dominated the center, surrounded by expensive leather chairs. 8 board members were already seated, along with various lawyers and financial advisors. And at the head of the table sat Damien. He'd changed more than his photos had shown. His face was lined with stress, his eyes tired. The past year of watching his company fail had clearly taken its toll. But he still carried himself with that air of authority I remembered, still commanded the room with his presence. Until he saw us. I watched his face as Lily wheeled into the conference room, myself walking slowly behind her with my cane. Recognition didn't come immediately. He looked at Lily the way you'd look at any young business executive, with professional interest and appraisal. Then his eyes flickered to the wheelchair, then to her face, then confusion clouded his features as something familiar about her made him look closer. And then he knew. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He gripped the edge of the table like he might fall over if he didn't hold on to something. "Hello, Damien," Lily said, her voice steady and professional, as she wheeled to the opposite end of the table. Or should I say, "Hello, Dad." The room went completely silent. The board members looked confused, glancing between Damien and Lily. One of the lawyers started to say something, but Lily held up her hand. For those who don't know, Damien Castellano is my biological father. 15 years ago, he abandoned me on my grandmother's doorstep because caring for a disabled daughter was too much trouble. He told my grandmother that his business,
this company was more important than I was, that I was holding him back from his full potential. Lily, Damien finally found his voice, but it came out as a hoarse whisper. How did I end up here? She finished for him. That's an interesting story. After you abandoned me, my grandmother, Eleanor Castellano, she gestured to me, fought for legal guardianship. She spent what little money she had making sure I got the medical care and therapy you denied me. She worked with social services to get me back into school. She advocated for me, supported me, believed in me when everyone else, including you, had written me off. I saw several board members looking at me with new interest, some with sympathy, others with concern about the legal implications of what they were hearing. And I did something you said I'd never be able to do, Lily continued, her voice growing stronger. I became independent. I graduated top of my class. I started a company, and that company became successful, very successful. She opened the folder in her lap and slid a document across the table to Damien. Which brings us to today. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Horizon Adaptive Technologies has completed the acquisition of Meridian Solutions. I now own your company, Dad. The business you chose over your daughter belongs to your daughter. The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other. Lawyers pulled out phones to verify the information. One of the board members, an older woman named Patricia Chen, I recognized her from articles about the company, stood up. Is this true, Damien? Is she your daughter? Damien couldn't seem to form words. He just stared at Lily like she was a ghost, like she couldn't possibly be real. It's true, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, every word of it. I'm Eleanor Castellano, Lily's grandmother and legal guardian. And yes, Damien abandoned his daughter because he thought she'd be a burden on his precious business career. This is a conflict of interest, one of the lawyers sputtered. Personal vendetta. This acquisition could be challenged. Actually, Lily's lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Torres, spoke up. The acquisition is completely legal and above board. All proper procedures were followed. The price paid was fair market value, actually generous given Meridian's current financial situation. Ms. Castellano's personal relationship to Mr. Castellano, or lack thereof, doesn't invalidate the business transaction. But surely, Patricia Chen said, if we'd known about this personal history, we might have looked for other buyers.
With all due respect, Lily interrupted. Horizon was the only buyer offering to keep Meridian's current employees and maintain the existing contracts. Every other interested party wanted to strip the company for parts. I may have personal history with Damien Castellano, but I'm offering your employees and clients the best possible outcome. I watched Damien during this exchange. He seemed to be aging before my eyes, shrinking in his chair. Finally, he looked directly at Lily. Why? He asked, his voice broken. Why? Do this. If you hate me so much. I don't hate you, Lily said, and I heard the truth in her words. I did for a long time. I spent years being angry, hurt, wondering what was wrong with me that made my own father not want me. But Grandma taught me something important. She looked at me, and I saw tears shining in her eyes. She taught me that your failure wasn't my fault. Your cruelty didn't define my worth. Your abandonment didn't limit my potential. You chose your business over me. And you know what? I'm glad you did. Damien flinched, like she'd slapped him. Because if you'd kept me, I would have grown up with a father who resented me, who saw me as a burden, who made me feel like I had to apologize for existing. Instead, I got Grandma. I got someone who fought for me, who believed in me, who showed me that disability doesn't mean inability. She straightened in her wheelchair, looking every inch the powerful CEO she'd become.
I didn't buy your company for revenge, Dad. I bought it because it made good business sense, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't satisfaction in this moment. You told Grandma 15 years ago that I'd never be independent, never be successful, never amount to anything. You were wrong about all of it. Lily, Damien's voice cracked. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was cruel. I was a coward. If I could go back. But you can't. And honestly, I don't want you to. Because going back would mean I didn't spend 15 years with Grandma. It would mean I didn't become who I am today. Your abandonment hurt me, but it also freed me from having to be the daughter of a man who couldn't love me as I am. She pulled out another document from her folder. Here are the terms of the acquisition. Meridian Solutions will become a subsidiary of Horizon Adaptive Technologies. Most employees will keep their positions. You, she looked at Damien, will be offered a consulting position for 1 year to help with the transition, after which your contract will not be renewed. The severance package is generous, more generous than you deserve. Damien took the document with shaking hands, but didn't look at it. He was still staring at Lily like he couldn't believe she was real. I have a son, Preston. He's 12. Maybe you could meet him. Maybe we could... No, Lily said firmly. I'm not interested in a relationship with you, Damien. This is business, nothing more. You made your choice 15 years ago. I'm just here to show you the consequences of that choice. She turned her wheelchair toward the door, then paused and looked back. But I do want you to know something. Every time you look at this company, every time you see the Horizon logo on what used to be your legacy, I want you to remember the 8-year-old girl you left crying in the rain. I want you to remember that you had something precious and you threw it away because it wasn't convenient. I want you to live with that knowledge every single day. The conference room was utterly silent as Lily wheeled toward the exit. I followed her, leaning on my cane, but before I left, I turned back to look at my son one more time. Damien, I said, and he looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes. You were my greatest achievement and my biggest failure. I raised you to be better than this, and I'll spend the rest of my life wondering where I went wrong. Mom, please! But Lily, I continued, she's my redemption. She's proof that love and persistence and fighting for what is right actually matters. She's everything you could have been if you'd chosen differently. I hope that knowledge haunts you. I walked out of that conference room feeling lighter than I had in 15 years. In the elevator going down, Lily was quiet. I watched her carefully, worried about the emotional toll this confrontation had taken on her. Are you okay? I asked softly. She was quiet for a moment longer. Then she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. I am, she said, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time since he left me in your driveway, I really am okay. I pulled her into my arms, this brilliant, strong, extraordinary woman who had overcome everything life had thrown at her. I'm so proud of you, I whispered. So incredibly proud. I couldn't have done any of it without you, Grandma. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished, it's because you loved me when no one else would. We held each other in that elevator, two women who had survived abandonment and poverty and doubt and pain and come out the other side stronger. 6 months later, I was back in my favorite chair in our living room, reading the business section of the newspaper. There was an article about Horizon Adaptive Technologies' successful integration of Meridian Solutions. The combined company was now valued at over $2 billion, and Lily had been named one of Forbes' 30 under 30 business leaders to watch. The article mentioned, as almost a footnote, that former Meridian CEO Damien Castellano had completed his consulting period and was now seeking new opportunities. I smiled at that carefully neutral phrasing. What it really meant was that Damien was job hunting, trying to rebuild a career that had been defined by the company he'd lost to his daughter.
Lily came into the living room, moving from her wheelchair to the couch with the ease that came from years of physical therapy and adaptive equipment. "Reading about yourself again?" she teased. "About you," I corrected. "Always about you." She settled next to me and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Taking me in, fighting for me, all the years of struggle and sacrifice?" I looked at this remarkable young woman, remembering the terrified 8-year-old who'd been left in the rain, and felt my heart swell with love. "Not for a single second," I said. "You gave my life purpose, Lily. You gave me a reason to fight, to hope, to keep going. I should be thanking you." "We saved each other," she said softly, taking my hand. "Yes," I agreed. "We did." Outside, rain started falling, just like it had that March evening 15 years ago. But this time, we were safe and warm and together, surrounded by the life we'd built through determination and love. Damien had chosen his business over his daughter, believing it would be his legacy. But his legacy had ended up being a cautionary tale of greed and cruelty. My legacy, our legacy, was so much better. It was a young woman who'd proven that disability wasn't inability, who'd shown that abandonment didn't define your worth, who'd built an empire not in spite of her challenges, but because she'd learned from them. And it was the love between a grandmother and granddaughter who'd saved each other when the world tried to break them both. That was a legacy worth fighting for. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever faced something similar? Comment below and let me know. And if this story touched your heart, please share it so others can hear about Lily's incredible journey. Thank you for staying until the end. You mean the world to me.